building hubs for innovation. In the Global Innovation Hub, we are opening a space to promote transformative innovation that will bring key actors in the climate agenda to dialogue, to have a space and look what is needed as opposed to what is perceived as possible today. And in this space, we will be working with the regional collaboration centers. This is an infrastructure that the Secretariat has put in place to facilitate the process of implementation of the Paris Agreement in the region. So we have a network of 6 regional collaboration centers in Global South, and we have the privilege to partner with the World Green Economic Organization, for example, to host one of the regional collaboration centers in the MENA region. So it's been a very, very interesting journey where we work together with WGEO in promoting climate action, particularly focusing on green economy transition. And together with that and the support from the center, we have this session where we will be looking into what are the opportunities for climate innovation in the MENA region. So we have a wonderful panel. But the main purpose of giving this space is to connect these needs from cities to the infrastructure that is offered by the Global Innovation Hub and bring actors from subnational governments and cities to be part of our movement. We want to understand first what is needed, and with that said, then we can help you to connect and facilitate some enabling actors that will help to put together the plans and move ahead with the implementation. So we are very happy to have you all here. And today we launch a digital collaboration platform with our partners. It was introduced few sessions before, and we expect that partners like you and the audience that is here at COP27, as well as the virtual participants that are looking at this session, come and use the platform so that we can have a collaboration space to promote moonshot innovations. And thank you again for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. With this, I'd like to introduce Mr. Waleed bin Salman. He's connecting from Dubai here today. It's really a pleasure to have him today with us, because not only the collaboration that we have with the RCC, but also because they are instrumental for the plans that we have ahead of us for COP28. So what we launched today is the beginning of a journey that will take us to the next steps. And of course, some of the next steps are targeting COP28. So it's a pleasure to have you all with us, Mr. bin Salman. So with that, I would like to invite you for your opening remarks. The floor is yours, Mr.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. I would like really to thank everyone, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the World Green Economy Organization, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you in this panel discussion, cities in the MENA region as an opportunity hub for innovation. And the event at the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub Pavilion at COP27 and the second day, and what we can feel, the excitement that and the participation from countries as well as from the private sector as well. Ladies and gentlemen, held on the sideline of COP27, this event will explore how innovation can enhance livelihood, economies, and communities while reducing climate risk and mitigating emission. While we'll focus on the best practices, lesson learned, and way forward to showcase what challenges and opportunities MENA city are facing in making the need paradigm shift to low emission and resilient spaces. Cities in the MENA region are experiencing a myriad of economies, social and environmental challenges. Climate change impact are multiplying these challenges, increasing city vulnerability and exposing livelihood to disruption. Sea level rise, droughts, extreme weather events, coupled with urban sprawl, mobility issues, and migration need to be tackled holistically to increase the resilience of the cities. This is why innovation of policies, solution, coordination, and technologies play a major role in information of cities. In the MENA region, considering the regional priorities of energy, food, water security, as well as a rising youth population, Middle Eastern and North African cities are opportunity hubs for innovation. Our distinguished speakers today will share their experiences on the needed engagement and planning to be made for fostering innovation and the practices and technologies needed for climate resilience development in the MENA region. Ladies and gentlemen, as a country, the United Arab Emirates has embarked on a journey to becoming a global hub and an effective example of a new green economy that can attain economic sustainability while protecting the environment for a future generation. The United Arab Emirates is committed to making the green economy a reality, and it's evident by our national policy that reflect the vision of our wise leadership. The line of the vision and the direction of our wise leadership, the United Arab Emirates has launched the United Arab Emirates Net Zero Strategy Initiative 2050, and the United Arab Emirates has a clear strategy toward the net zero, and Dubai strategy by 2050 to have 100% from clean energy. And we believe this is an achievable goal. We have experienced a lot of implementation in such technology, where today we have a lot of projects already been implemented in the region. We have the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, a capacity of 3,000 megawatt. We have Masdar City that implementing a lot of great initiative locally and in the region. So what we believe, the world green economy, it's important and understand how the urban spaces accommodate its inhabitants while creating value and economic growth and maintain a sustainability. In this respect, World Green Economy engage non-state sectors, which include cities as part of the mandate, and it's also focusing on innovation. For example, for the Green Economy Organization work with the carbon space to explore how can satellite application benefit the green economy, especially in the urban areas. Several use cases for these satellites have been identified to inform how can city reach sustainability by understanding urban extent, density, and the growth, the green area, air population, and the quality, urban heat island and heat hazards, land administration and taxation, informal settlement, and early warning system. All this is important to show it as use cases for implementation. The innovation and technology in turn informs policies and finance. And this is also an element of circularity and iteration which is needed to be able to achieve city sustainability. Through such event, we reiterate our commitment to foster a green way of development and secure a balance between economic growth and environmental protection. The participation of policymakers and innovators in this event, such as these, plays an important role in creating a framework for nurturing the planet's ecosystem and mitigation the impact of environmental degradation of human welfare. Today's event is exploring this important aspect and how can we protect livelihood, our economy, and our ecosystem by enhancing innovation in cities. Thank you all, and I wish all the productive and successful event in, at UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub Pavilion, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, and so a great space for innovations in the MENA region. Thank you for the support. With this fantastic speech note, I would like to pass the floor to our moderator, Mari Awad from the Regional Collaboration Center, MENA. Will be taking the panel forward and introducing the panelists. Thank you very much all, and I pass the mic to Mari. Mari, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Carlos, and thank you, Mr. Waleed bin Salman, for those inspiring words. I want to welcome a very distinguished panel here with us today. We have Ms. Abeer Manneh, who's a Sustainability Director at NEOM, Mr. Avi Hasson, CEO at Startup National Central, and Mr. Richard Bush, Chief Environment Officer of NEOM. Thank you very much for being here with us today. So just reiterating a few words from the opening remarks. There are some commonalities in how MENA cities are facing challenges, from urban sprawl to migration, and adding the climate change impacts to it really brings it down, boils it down to a tornado of problems that needs to be addressed holistically. It cannot be in silos. And what we'd love to hear from you today is to understand what those common challenges are, but also to understand how they're being addressed in terms of innovation, not only innovation in technology, but also innovation in policy and in finance, and how these are interlinked together. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor first to Abeer. Abeer, we'd love to hear from you. What are some of those common challenges that MENA cities are facing today, but also in the coming decades, should we fail to address the effects of climate change, and also understanding what the element of migration and those non-environmental pressures that cities face come into play?
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity. I see this in, there are two trends from my perspective in the MENA region. It doesn't fall in one bucket. So one is those cities that evolved organically for quite some time. And then they were exposed or put under pressure from migration, growth in population, overconsumption of resources, some political or instabilities that they're facing, which leads also to migration. So that's one kind of group, if you like. The other group is a group of cities that sort of emerged or expanded quite rapidly. And with that, the challenge comes more on the development construction side rather than actually the population growth. But with doing things very quickly, planning-wise, it kind of had some inherent problems, which is you build for not necessarily people, but for cars. Like mobility for me is very fundamental in those cities, because those cities really built a lot of infrastructure quite quickly without proper, not proper, but maybe like long-term planning in mind. And what that did is a lot of pressure in terms of the mobility system infrastructure, and then you get into this vicious circle where you have so many cars on the road, and then you have to build more roads, and then you get more cars on the road, and you have to build more roads. And so there is a livability issue within those cities, but also obviously creating a lot of emissions associated with those. On the other hand, the cities that grew organically and then faced with the urban sprawl because so many people were moving in or they had an overgrowth, they face more issues from climate perspective, I think, around adaptation and resilience, because they were cities that were planned but then had this additional layer on top of it. And then you're faced in some areas with issues to adapt to, you know, the sea level rise. You also have a lot of pressure on the natural ecosystem, and so you'd face, you know, some species to be extinct, endangered. And the only way to do this is to collaborate regionally rather than locally, because the impact of climate change, you might be able to establish some refuge areas to some species in another location, and then you have to work through some sort of ecological planning and sort of ecological corridors. So to your, I guess, second point, how do we address this in terms of maybe technology that's integrated, or innovation, or policy? I think that the role of policy is fundamental in terms of addressing sustainable planning issues and how we plan our growth to be adaptive to climate change. You know, you can definitely look at restrictions on development adjacent on coastal areas, introduce some early warning systems, for instance, looking at sustainable urban drainage systems to alleviate flooding impacts. So that can happen through policy, change. But also there is a lot of technology and innovation that's coming in. And I think we have a lot of good wisdom, if you like, in our cities that if we learn from and then adapt it to this new era, then we can actually do this. There's a lot happening on the smart cities, the cognitive cities front. So I think there's really some key things that are coming in. The energy transition is a big one. The food, the agricultural system, we have the knowledge, but we also have opportunities to innovate in that space.
Thank you so much, Abeer, for your thoughts. I think one aspect which is very interesting, that the way you categorize those cities, but also the aspect of speed. So I think the policy making and the innovation really differs depending on the speed of how the urban sprawl is going, the speed of climate impacts is being felt. So it really depends from place to place. So I think that's a very interesting perspective. I would like now to move to Abeer. So we wanted to hear from you with your extensive experience with the startup Nation Central. So as an organization leading on innovation and technology as a solution, it would be great if you can give us some insights on how technological innovation can increase the resilience of cities to climate change, and particularly in the MENA region as facing the same climate.
Thank you. It's working. Thank you, first of all. It's great to be here in this company, and just following up on what Abeer said maybe. First, I would say, not just to us people living in the MENA region, that it's a very interesting case to learn from and to apply everywhere in the world. First of all, the area is, of course, vulnerable more than other areas to these changes that were mentioned here, desertification, rise of sea level. It's like we check every box, right? Scarcity of water, food, and definitely if I just look at Israel, temperature has already risen in over 1.5 degrees in the past 50 years, and it's certainly rising. But I think MENA is also interesting in the sense that it's a great case study in terms of aggregating the innovation powers, many times coming from the private sector, academia, and so on, along with really committed and visionary governments, public sector, both on the federal level, but also on the city level, and I'll say a word about that. And again, we have great examples here on the panel. And I think and maybe we'll get to that at a later stage in the panel, if you do those smart public-private partnership, a lot can be done. And if Abeer talked about collaboration on the regional level, I would certainly emphasize that it goes beyond the political, geographical level of a certain state. And we could imagine and should imagine a lot of collaboration happening between the countries in the region to enable that. Now, cities work better. Again, it was mentioned here. Cities actually have a lot of knowledge, a lot of practical knowledge about managing life. They know the challenges, and they have the ability to execute. A mayor can have a vision, a dream, and actually fulfill it. A minister, not always so. So I think that's where the opportunity lies. Now, if we get super practical, I'd like to highlight a few challenges, and honestly, I think there are about a dozen, but don't worry, I'll just mention a few. One, I think, was already spoken by Abeer. There's not enough data. There are no carbon emission data system. There are no early warning about sea level, rising of sea level, drainage line and their sites, sensors in the street. Again, a city always has legacy, and I think you explained that evolution, and it's not easy to get to the place where those systems are implanted. But I think that's a key element that is needed and exists on the technology level. Technology is not the problem. Sometimes systems are the problem, but it's not as if we need to invent, like other challenges in climate. Here, the key components are there. And I think a lot of will be on the integration side and then in the implementation side. So I think one cluster that I would talk about is really the issue of monitoring, data, gathering, integration, fusion of data, and so on. And I think just getting that picture, both on a data and visual level, will make a huge difference for the managers of a city as they move along. Then if you add to that, and again, I'm just touching very broadly, you spoke about mobility, and obviously green mobility, huge challenges which vary from city to city. You mentioned that. The whole issue of green building and construction, especially, by the way, in public building, that's quite challenging. How do you deploy those technologies in schools, for example? There are practical challenges to do that. I'm not just talking about policy challenges that are there. So I think, again, a lot of needs are there. I'll just touch maybe one last issue at this stage, and again, happy to talk about more, which is the issue of waste and water. So I think both are critical, and in many, many places around the world, certainly that's the case. In Israel, are under the responsibility of the municipalities and the cities, and I think there the region can really go a long way from where we are today, both in terms of recycling waste, which requires a variety of systems on all levels. And I wouldn't say it's worthless, but certainly the impact of just having one of them is not as significant as having the whole chain, which is what you want. And then the issue of water. And in water, and with that I will end, I truly think Israel is a remarkable case. Because while in the region, over 80% of the water is not recycled, not to mention the water loss, along the pipes, Israel, for many years now, has been recycling over 90% of our water, which is repurposed for urban and agriculture use. That combined with desalination, a technology that really wasn't just invented in Israel. I think one of the things that was proven was the ability to scale. It's really on a national level, in our case, to have desalination as an efficient and effective water solution. I think that is something that has really changed the game. And in my mind, can be put into use throughout the region. So I think there are a lot of needs, but I also think, looking in a positive way, that the technologies are there. And if we create those collaborations correctly, I think a lot can be done. And maybe later we can touch more about what's needed on the policy side, because I think I absolutely agree with you that a lot of the keys are there.
Thank you, Avi, for this overview. And I think what's interesting about this particular topic is how cities in the MENA region really do face some of very similar challenges. And the replicability of the solutions is very interesting. So it's definitely worth considering. And what you said, I think it's a very interesting point on the technologies are there, but there's the missing links to actually deploy those technologies. And we maybe come from the climate sphere, but mayors and policymakers have a much wider view. And the integration of those elements, maybe those technologies and those solutions with other elements of sustainable development, from livelihoods to economy, might also need to be integrated for them to be deployed effectively. And that might slow down how fast these solutions are coming, because there's so much to take in the holistic level, so it's also a challenge. So great, Ali. We'll come back to you on the policy point. Richard, yeah, thank you. Richard, as the Chief Environment Officer of NEOM, NEOM is a very particular case in a particular city. So we'd love to hear from you on what are some lessons learned in actually instilling a vision for a city moving forward in terms of sustainability and innovation, and if you had to pinpoint some core elements of the blueprint for replication.
Look, that's a fantastic question. I'd first like to just circle back to a couple of points. I think from my perspective, there's a real mystery of why cities exist anywhere. You know, it's almost impossible to predict where a city is going to be, and it's almost impossible to explain why certain cities are where they are and how they've survived. And the challenge of the MENA city, having now lived and moved into this region, is every one of those cities defies nature and in some ways defies logic. These cities are built in extreme environments and they become a haven, an oasis for us to eke out a living, and they're reinventing themselves over thousands of years. So I think it's quite difficult to understand this, and I guess the challenges are there. I mean, the single biggest challenge in the MENA region is air quality. And this is a huge challenge, and the World Health Organization says that almost 270,000 people in the MENA region die annually as a result, or their lives shortened by air quality. And we've got to remember that almost everyone in the MENA region ultimately lives in a city. So it's a huge challenge, and the issues of congestion, the issues of old fossil fuel-driven mobility systems, the lack of public transport, all of these things add up to some of these, critical issues that are affecting our quality of life. So from NEOM's perspective, I'm the Chief Environment Officer. NEOM will be a new city for 9 million people, built within a region in Saudi Arabia, literally 20 kilometres across the water from where we sit. I'm often asked the question of why build a city? And it's almost like, why not? And then the second question is, where would you build one? And it's almost wherever you wish. You actually have to create something that makes sense. And with NEOM, I think the question is, what would be the blueprint? What would be the starting point? Well, we have the fortunate opportunity with NEOM to be building a city from a blank sheet. And we're actually addressing this city through the principles of livability and sustainability. We're looking at the circular economy, we're looking at the materials we build the city in, we're looking at the way we're going to transport people through this city with the principles of zero emissions. During operation, we want to drive down emissions through construction. We're dedicating more than 95% of this region to nature, because livability and nature and sustainability are tied together. We're trying to actually build a city with the least amount of materiality and the simplest convenience to allow people to connect. Because I come back to my first point, cities exist because people want them to exist. Cities exist because people come together to coexist, to trade, to share, to rear their families. And it's a very hard thing to put a finger on. And I guess from my perspective, I've got the challenge and the privilege to be involved probably in once in a generational opportunity to build a new smart city. But this mystery of what will be the piece, what is the soul to the city that's going to attract people and bring them there with a simple philosophy of coexisting in the most peaceful and harmonious way, is something that we can't predict. We can't say we've got the answers to, but it's what I'd be interested in exploring. And this is, being at a conference like this is a part of that journey.
Thank you, Richard. I think you can keep the mic because I have a follow-up question for you, actually. So since NEOM is being built from the ground up, there are many challenges that probably the team building NEOM has faced that no other people have faced in building a new city. So it'd be interesting to know from your perspective, what were challenges that you encountered? If there were technologies that maybe were fit to be included in NEOM for the livability perspective, but then were not there. Or for example, the deployment was slow. Or, so that I think that could reflect into the existing cities in terms of what challenges they might face if in a new city these challenges exist.
I think, look, the challenges can be summed up in three ways. The first is having a coherent vision and getting people, and particularly the decision makers, on board to completely transform your thinking. You know, it's very easy to slip back into building what we know. Anyone can build a building or build a city that's unsustainable, but very few people can actually understand how to build or even imagine how to build a city that's going to be fit for the future and address the challenges we currently face, because we're stepping into uncharted territory. That'd be the first thing. So having the vision and the faith of those that can make the decisions to drive it. And we're very fortunate in NEOM, in our chairman and our Crown Prince, that they've set an outrageous, almost scary vision, an exciting vision. The second challenge for us that we're facing now is that we have the will, but we don't necessarily have the how. And even when we get the how, because this is such a large project, this is possibly the world's most significant construction project, will be maybe for the next decade, that we don't have the industry and the support and the supply chain to provide us with the technologies. So we're creating the demand, but the world is not ready to serve that demand. That's the second big challenge. And this is going to be something we need to create together. And I think then the third challenge is to overcome people's fear and their current knowledge. You know, it's one thing to have leadership, it's one thing to have capacity and to bring innovation. It's another thing, the third biggest challenge for us is to free people from your prejudice, free ourselves from our prejudice, and actually try to think, project, you know, get communities and public to project forward for future generations. And that's a really significant, it's almost like a philosophical challenge and a practical challenge to take people on this journey with you. And that'd be the three big challenges that we're faced with.
Thank you, Richard. I think that's incredibly interesting, because these challenges you faced as part of NEOM head on, but I believe that some cities that already exist in MENA don't know that these challenges will actually be encountered if they want to move forward towards a sustainability solution. So the value chains may not be keeping up. Prejudices and lack of flexibility maybe for policymakers and decision makers to embark on that journey, I think is also replicable in existing cities. And also, yeah, I think that echoes into one of the issues. So I want to go back to Avi, if you want to touch on that, but also understand what might be some enablers to accelerate the change.
Yeah. Let me just say, I mean, it's not just a remarkable, it's an exciting vision, like you talked about. And I'm not in the building cities business, but I've been in the innovation business for 30 years, both as an innovator, as an investor, in many, many different hats. And to me, your description was very much like a startup. That's what we try to do, with the advantages that you don't have any legacy, which is an advantage, and then all the disadvantages or challenges or opportunities that you talked about. Of course, with the small caveat that a city, as I think as Richard beautifully depicted in his introduction, is a living organ. So you cannot, by definition, forecast what will be the need. You need to build it in a way that will enable you to really bring in, change, modify whatever components that are needed. Super hard and yet super exciting. So definitely a vision to applaud, and I think a lot of lessons could be learned and will be learned. I know for a fact that the world is looking. The world is looking to see the outcome of this ambitious project, and Of course, you don't need necessarily to copy and paste everything. It doesn't work. But I think a lot of best practices will be learned, and a lot of new markets and new products will be created, as Richard said. I think for a city that has legacy and really wants to bring it in, I would just maybe mention a few enablers or key issues that are always there when innovation meets the public sector. So first, stating the obvious, but it's important to mention that bureaucracy kills innovation. It kills innovation. And cities that would like to really bring into the fabric those solutions will have to adapt their tender structure, will have to create sandboxes, and the ability for companies, which are not always, but many of them are young, small companies, to have that ability to pilot their systems, to have to go a little bit higher in their risk adoption or risk, so be less risk averse in what they do. And that's a key issue because many times, and besides my career in the private sector, I did work almost 7 years for the government, and the match there is problematic. So cut red tape, create those sandboxes, that's number one. The second is funding. Have funding available, not 100% funding, but matching funds. Again, take away, share the risk involved with that, create the incentives for people to engage with the cities in those complicated trial and error projects. The third one that I will mention is internal champions and innovators. From my experience, it's important, so obviously top commitment is key. We have an extreme case where, right, MBS himself is pushing this forward, but it's important to have those internal champions that wake up in the morning and that's their job. Their KPIs depend on that. That's what we're expected to do. And that's extremely important. And the fourth really is broader, but as I've said, is create those public-private partnership in a smart way that would really manage to do those early success, but also create those frameworks. All of these are very simple to describe, as I've just did. Extremely hard to implement. Extremely hard to implement. But I think the beauty is that they're not theory. I think we can and should learn from cities that have successfully implemented those, and while recognizing that like a plant or a good wine, you cannot copy and paste. You cannot expect the same wine, the same one coming in Australia to be exactly like the one in Bordeaux, but it can be a really good wine. An extremely good wine, it'll be a different wine, but in order to make that extremely good wine, you do need to learn the best practices of winemaking and apply them to your specific terroir, your climate, your soil, your culture. So I think these are some of the key issues. And again, I do want to emphasize over and over again, it has to include collaboration. Innovation loves collaboration. The more you do that, regardless of how big your budget or vision is, there's no way in achieving it without collaborating with multiple players around the world.
Sorry. Thank you, Avi, for those key elements. I think moving forward into climate action, the discussion is never separated anymore. At least when it comes to addressing the effects of climate change, private sector needs to be there, all non-state actors need to be there, and especially at the city level, because they are solution bringers, but are also not subject to some of the constraints that the public sector is subject to, and therefore can be much quicker in instilling those solutions. I want to go back to Abeer first, if you have any thoughts on the matter, and also second, maybe to address the element that is common to all cities, but especially in MENA, which is the element of disruption, and how technology and innovation can address those elements of disruption, which are not only affecting livelihoods and ecosystems, but economies. And in terms of the dollar value of those, of not addressing or of inaction in cities, what are the implications here for innovation?
Yeah, thank you. So I heard two very strong words that touched me. So you described the city as a living organism, and Richard, you spoke of the soul of the city. So I was actually thinking of, people. And one of the things that we should touch on is this connection with nature, which is lacking in the MENA cities. We're less connected with nature than we were before, fighting nature in some way, yeah. So to me, we need to bridge that to make a change, because that connection changes people, and people will make the change. People are the cities, right? So awareness becomes, part of the collaborators are the people living in the cities, and awareness is very much needed. But awareness to bring about this behavior change, the lifestyle change, because it starts within us. So I just wanted to add this to the discussion here. In terms of disruptions and how we can change this, I think that we need to flip this totally, the narrative. I think we should be looking at disruptive, technologies or situations to find the opportunity in them. So I can give you, an example where we're looking for green construction materials, right? So we're saying, okay, this is gonna cost us so much, and we have to put a lot of investment, etc. But the reality is everyone else is moving towards that direction. So looking at MENA in isolation, maybe not the right thing to do, but looking at the global picture, then you would see that premium, if we're investing now, is gonna bring a lot of profit. I'm just talking financials. So wherever there is a challenge, there is an opportunity, and there is a way of flipping that. And that's what we need to look, this is the way, the mindset that we need to be looking at.
Thank you. Sorry. I think that's a very interesting perspective, and this narrative has been used so much in justifying climate action to policymakers. The inaction costs way more than the action in the long run. And I believe even some multilateral development banks came up with assessments on cost of adaptation, for example, with the known shocks and the known impacts to cities. If there is an upstart investment at the beginning, what will be that return? And it's justifiable. In monetary terms, it's totally justifiable. So this is a very good point. And proactiveness rather than reactiveness is something that may be lacking in cities in general, but also the MENA region. I think the collective amount of experience on this panel is really impressive. So I would give back the floor to each of you one last time, maybe to give one key message. There's a lot, I think, to digest from all perspectives. When people are being asked about solutions, there is a bit of overwhelming amount of recommendations, but also frustration at the slowness of how these things actually get picked up in real life and in practical terms. So it would be great to hear from you, maybe what would be one key message before we close for today.
I think, look, my last point would be don't underestimate the power of the local community to bring about change. Too often we rely on our financial sectors and our engineers to tell us and guide us on what makes a great place to live. But I think we need to realise that it's community that drives the change that we want to see. So harness that power and work with it, and don't underestimate it.
I'll just say before my my key closing words, let's say. This is early days in COP, right? Just second or third day, but I did want to share, and maybe it's my optimism, a change I'm feeling throughout the corridors. That I think that in addition to the very important commitments, statements, declarations, I think people understand that action is needed now. Besides the general strategic plans which needs to be thought about and taking place, we need to start acting. And I think we need to take that spirit that I'm sensing and really put practical elements on the ground. So that's just something I'm feeling. Again, that's my optimism, but I think there's a sense of urgency that I haven't felt, let's say last year's or the year before that. My closing word would really be about what I said. I think maybe following up on what Richard said about communities, I think within the region, we have the will and we have the power. We have the brain power, we have the knowledge, we have everything that is needed to start laying out the issues, learning from each other, and actively using the power of innovation and technology to really cope with the challenge, which is common, but also, I fully agree with you, Abeer, a huge opportunity that lays in front of us if we act correctly.
To me, my key message would be, we know the answers, we know what to do, so we need to do it. And we also know that the solutions are there in nature and within us. The answers are there, we just need to act upon them.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I think one last key message for me today would be that what I hear is that when designing those solutions, when innovating, people should be at the center of those decisions. And if we don't lose sight of this objective and the safety of the people and the ecosystems, I think we would be in good hands. So thank you very much for being here with us today and wishing you a nice day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much.